Hey, it's Jesse from the Biggest Guys Locker Room. You guys ever thought about starting your own podcast? Whether it be for business, personal, or simply talking about the things you love? Well, I can honestly say when we started our podcast, it was the best decision and it's the most fun we've ever had. But starting a new podcast can be overwhelming at times. And that's where Buzzsprout comes in. Buzzsprout is the best way to start your own professional podcast. They're so good, they've already helped out over 100,000 podcasters get their message out to the world. Buzzsprout offers you so many tools, like a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, and tools to promote your episodes, and more and more and more. Buzzsprout even gets your show listed on every major podcast platform, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. They provide so many tools to help you get started with tutorials on YouTube, podcast tutorials, everything you may need to get your journey started. So if you're looking to start your professional podcast today, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and help support our show. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast. All right, welcome back to the Vegas Guys Locker Room. I'm your host, Jesse. Guys, it's week 9. Big week. Everybody's moving around in fantasy football. A lot of moves in the NFL world itself. Great show lined up for you. We're going to talk trade deadline, injury report, give you my starts of the week. We're also going to review my Yahoo weekly fantasy lineup. That's always fun, just to see how I do. It's been a up and down year, but we'll get started. The trade deadline moves. Now, we discussed this on First and Mad on my Thursday live stream with Brad Michaels at Mad Maddie's. Some big moves. We had Leonard Williams move from the New York Giants to Seattle. As a Niner fan, it scares me. That team's starting to bulk up defensively. Offensively, they're starting to get their stride. They look as good as they did last year. Added some key pieces to that running game in the offseason. Seattle looks dangerous. They look very, very dangerous. Hopefully the Niners can keep pace and get this ship right. I know they dropped 3 in a row. But they also did make some moves. So Leonard Williams goes from New York to Seattle, shoring up the middle of that defensive line to help them make the home stretch. Now, Chase Young, Washington, of course, we talked about how they moved big assets on their defensive side of the football. Chase Young being one of them. He goes from Washington to the 49ers. The Niners have been lacking that defensive end pressure. Bosa's getting double teamed. It's been tough. The sacks aren't coming. The pressures aren't coming. And the secondary is getting eaten up as a result of this. I know the Niners really are a win-now team, like we've talked about with the free agency and everything that comes along with it. Once you have to start paying guys, your window starts to shrink. So hopefully they make the right moves. I know they've really tried to get the pass rush going. They made the move with Denver early in the season. Hopefully this Chase Young pick works out for him. Hopefully he can stay healthy and contribute. Montez Sweat also leaving Washington. He goes to Chicago, which was a big surprise. We talked about this. Chicago being buyers at the trade deadline. Very interesting to see, especially given their situation. I know right now they're lined up for the number 2 and number 3 picks. Curious to see how they make this move work, if this is a long-term investment. I know it didn't cost them a whole lot. So I'll look at maybe Montez Sweat being a guy they want to extend and make part of this Chicago Bears defense going forward. Josh Dobbs, 3rd team this year, ends up going from Arizona to Minnesota after the Kirk Cousins Achilles injury. Losing him for the year was devastating, especially for fantasy owners. He was having such a great year. Hopefully he can get back. It's going to be a tough road for him. I know listening to some broadcasts, some radio talk shows, he did get in touch with Aaron Rodgers to see what steps he took. I know Aaron Rodgers looks great for having an Achilles injury only 2.5 months ago. Curious to see what advice he gave him. Gave him the doctors. Hey, it's up to Kirk Cousins which route he wants to go. I think this is going to depend on the length of time because he's not going to return this season. There was no urgency for him to get back. There was no way he was going to get back in time for any kind of playoff run. With Rodgers, it happened so early in the season. There was an urgency to get him back before the end of the year. Hopefully them making the playoffs and Rodgers coming back to make an impact. Big one out of Cleveland. Well, I wouldn't say this is a big one. Just an interesting one because the People's Champ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, leaving Cleveland. He's always been that kind of consistent guy that's been in that locker room. He's finally out of Cleveland. He goes to Detroit. I think this means some big things, especially with Jameson Williams. Really hasn't made the impact that we all thought he would. He came in as a highly drafted wide receiver out of college. Of course, had the injury coming out, then had the suspension earlier this season. And the comments made by Dan Campbell that he's just not going to be an every time receiver, every down receiver, just not consistent. He just doesn't he doesn't get open. He's a big play or bust guy. It's just not working out. And I think this move is to try to shore up that depth at wide receiver. I just don't think they believe in Jameson Williams anymore. I don't think it's going to get there. Hopefully he can find some, maybe resurrect his career, get that ball rolling for himself. But I just don't see it happening. I think that's why they made this move. I think Jameson Williams, listen, if you're sitting on your bench, you're waiting for something to pop, it's probably time to move on. I know I have. I dropped him in my Dynasty League, looking to move on to something a little more secure, maybe with a little more promise. So Jameson Williams out for me in all regards. I just don't think it's going to happen for him. Maybe if he moves on, maybe if they look to trade him, maybe a change of scenery will help. But yeah, I just don't see it happening for him there in Detroit. So that was an interesting trade deadline. Nothing big. I think everybody got spoiled last year. I think I mentioned this on the First and Mad show. Everybody got spoiled last year with the Christian McCaffrey trade. But nobody really big moving. Washington was probably the biggest story, moving on from their two best defensive players and looking to probably start over. So looks like Ron Rivera's out. Talked about some other news in the league. Of course, the Raiders cleaning house, get rid of their coach, OC, and their GM. Man, it's weird because then you talk to the players, they seem like they are happier. I think you get a little jolt out of this Raider team. I know the offensive guys were just not happy. Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, those guys just were miserable. I think the only person sad to see McDaniels go is little Jimmy G. I think that he was the only person that probably still believed in Jimmy G as a starting quarterback. Now that McDaniels is out, so is Jimmy G. In comes a young rookie, Aiden O'Connell. Raiders trying to see what they've got there, and as far as young talents, looking where they need to move on. Probably knowing this year is a bust. You're not going to catch up to Kansas City, and of course with the Chargers right there, it's going to be a tough go at it for these Raiders team to even sneak into the playoffs. But well, I digress. Antonio Pierce getting that start, and listen, this is a big thing because Antonio Pierce gets promoted to head coach, and his first job as a head coach in his first game, against his old team, the New York Giants that he won a Super Bowl with all those years ago. Fun game to watch. I think it's going to be interesting for Antonio Pierce to play against his old team. And, hey, all the power to you, man. Good luck to you, Antonio. I know this is a tough job to take over, especially there with that offensive lows going on. All right, some injury reports, of course, questionable. The big ones is Puka Nacua and Matt Stafford. Stafford with that thumb injury. I don't know if he plays. They say it's a game-time decision. Puka Nacua is out with the knee injury. He's listed as questionable. I don't see why you play him in this game. Give him another week. Let him get healthy. But, hey, I digress. Let's see what this coaching staff and McVay decide to do. Another big one that was questionable was Josh Downs for the Colts, wide receiver. He's listed as questionable. I liked him this week. I liked the matchup. In fact, I originally had him on my Yahoo weekly lineup, but I had to move on just with that questionable move and move on to somebody else. So something to monitor if you're a Josh Downs owner. I think there was really no big outs as far as for me is surprise for fantasy football. The only one I saw was DeMarcado out of Arizona. I know a lot of people spent a lot of fab on him. There's those leagues with fab in their league. A lot of people moved on to grab him just because of the James Conner incident. And listen, you haven't gotten your money's worth out of this. But he is now out. I think this is a big move. I know Tony Jones Jr. has been elevated from the practice squad. So DeMarcado out. It looks like Ingram will be the guy there in Arizona until James Conner returns. So starts of the week for me. Listen, I'm going to give you guys my breakdown of the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver options that I like this week. I'm also going to give you a sleeper, and I'm going to tell you why I like these guys. So, start of the week, listen, Dak Prescott playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. I know a lot of people go, what's the Eagles defense? But the Eagles defense has not been great against especially wide receivers and quarterbacks. They've been great against the running game. Listen, don't play running backs against the Eagles. That's a tough go. I think the only option really you have is if you have a pass catching running back, which the Cowboys do. So Tony Pollard could still be in play as far as a PPR option. But I really like Dak Prescott this week. I know I talked about it on the show that I wouldn't be shocked if Dak Prescott's the number one quarterback on the week for fantasy. I think this is going to be a huge score fest. I told everybody, listen, if you got players from either one of these teams, the Cowboys or Eagles, if you're questioning, just start them. Start them. I think this could be the highest scoring option of the week. And look for these guys to explode. I mean, Dak Prescott is going to be huge. And look for him to really bounce back. And this is probably the game you've been waiting for as a fantasy owner of Dak Prescott to see if he gets back. Sleeper pick on the week is going to be Derek Carr, just because he's going up against a awful, awful defense. The Saints are playing the Bears this week, and the Bears, against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy, are ranked 28th in the league. So listen, if you're looking for a get-right game for Derek Carr and this offense, this would probably be it. I think a lot of guys in play in this game, especially for New Orleans. I think you can play Kamara with no worries. The Bears give up a lot to the running back position. And hopefully Olave can find the end zone, get this ship right, because, man, I know he came in. He was a second-round pick in most leagues, and he hasn't come through for you, So hopefully with these guys, I think Chris Olave may have a big game, but I like Derek Carr, seeing how he goes. If you have streaming options and if you're looking for streaming options, Derek Carr is absolutely one you can probably go with, and you would not be disappointed. Running back, this one was a tough one. I really don't have a whole lot of sleepers for this one because there were so many juicy matchups. I think the biggest one is going to be Saquon Barkley. Listen, going against that Raiders defense, they haven't proven to stop running backs. I think with no Darren Waller, Danny Dimes is back. I think Saquon Barkley has a huge game against the Raiders on Monday night. It's gonna be good to see. I think the Giants are a little mad about last week's loss, especially giving up the way they did. I think Saquon gets the ball, and I think he gets 30 touches at least in this game. So a lot of options, a lot of volume for Saquon Barkley this week, especially with the offense struggling. The receivers really haven't come through this year, and no Darren Waller, but you do get Danny Dimes back. So I like Saquon Barkley. I think you can also play, if you're looking for a sleeper type, I guess Jonathan Taylor. Not really a sleeper name, but looking at his usage so far, it's been a kind of 50-50 split with him, and I think he did get a little hurt. Last week he had a big first half, didn't really play in the second half. Zach Moss kind of took control of that game. If in this game Jonathan Taylor is fully healthy and stays healthy the entire game, I think he has a big blowout game and gets back to his ways when he was the number one guy and the only guy in that offense. So I think sprinkle in a little Zach Moss. I think this is the week where Zach Moss kind of falls off. Jonathan Taylor takes full control of that backfield, and you have a big game out of Jonathan Taylor. So if you're looking for that bounce-back game and that get-right game for Jonathan Taylor, I think this is it. I think you have a huge week out of him. Wide receiver, talked about it. Listen, you got to have CD-Lam. Anybody playing in this game is a huge plus because of the high-scoring anticipation for this game, but I do like the hookup with Dak Prescott and CD-Lam, especially going against probably, I think the Eagles are the worst team, giving up the most points to opposing. Yes, they are. They give it the most fantasy points to opposing receivers. So look at CD-Lam as having a huge week. I think this is going to be one of those. I wouldn't be shocked if CD-Lam didn't have 2 touchdowns in this game, over 120 yards receiving. So look for CD-Lam to have a huge game, especially against this weak Eagles secondary and the non-existent pass rush so far this year. It's going to be a tough one. The only thing that really could hurt Dallas in this one, listen, Tyron Smith is questionable for the game, the All-Pro left tackle. So hopefully that doesn't affect Prescott and they get that right. But sleepers at the wide receiver position, it's kind of torn on this one. Zay Flowers, who I like very much this week, but a really deep sleeper, I believe, also was Wan'Dale Robinson. Like I talked about, no Darren Waller. You know everybody's going to key on Saquon Barkley. Barkley's going to get his. Barkley's just too talented not to get his. But another guy you need to watch out is Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he can come through. I think he can have a huge week. If you're looking for a wide receiver option, Wan'Dale Robinson could be something to pick up and play this week. So Zay Flowers, same thing, going against that Seattle defense. That Seattle defense is ranked 25th against opposing wide receivers in fantasy. So if you're looking for another option, I think Zay Flowers could have a huge week. Tight end, I've talked about it already. I like TJ Hockenson. It looks like it's going to be that rookie in Minnesota. And what do rookies love? They love to throw to the tight ends. The tight ends are always open. So I look for Hockenson to have a huge volume day. I don't know if the numbers are going to be massive, but give me volume. And listen, if he falls into the end zone for a couple touchdowns, it's going to be a huge week for him. So give me the volume. I think TJ Hockenson is going to have a huge week in Minnesota. The sleeper I like, I think Dalton Kincaid in that Buffalo Bengals game. Bengals give up a lot to the tight end position as far as in fantasy. Dalton Kincaid is ready for a huge breakout game. I think this is going to be his best game of the season. So those are my starts of the week, sleepers and big names. We're going to get into the Yahoo Fantasy lineup. This is the first time you've listened to me do the Yahoo Daily Fantasy lineup. It's a budget of $200, and you have to stay within that budget. There's players that cost certain amounts. Of course, you got to find a little sleepers here and there if you want some of those big names. So I will give you the names and the price that cost me. Quarterback, like I've talked about, Dak Prescott. Give me Dak Prescott all day. He cost me $28 versus the Eagles. I think he's going to have a huge day. Wide receivers, like I said, CD-Lam. Give me that hookup. That costs $35 against the Eagles. Devontae Smith, I told you, get every player you can get in this game. I think it's going to be a shootout. He was only $17, so I kind of got him at a discount. He hasn't had a huge year, but I think after last week, he had a pretty decent game. I think that continues against the Cowboys. At $17, couldn't pass that up. Had to go a little cheap on the third option at wide receiver, but I did like him. He's one of my sleepers. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. Only $12 versus the Raiders on Monday night. Like I said, no Darren Waller. Saquon Barkley's going to have to they're going to have to get the ball to somebody else. It might as well be Wan'Dale Robinson. My running backs, like I said, love the Saints. Alvin Kamara, $31 versus the Bears. Bears give up a lot to the running back position. I think Kamara goes off for a big day. Not a whole lot of help otherwise in that backfield. Another start I like, listen, just announced that he is the starter for this week. Chuba Hubbard at $16 with the Panthers. I think this is a huge day for him. I think finally maybe he gets it. And he's been very efficient at the running back position. And at $16, you can't pass that up. Tight end, Ray talked about TJ Hockenson, $20 versus Atlanta. I think this is going to be good. I think Hockenson gets huge volume. Give me that all day at $20. I'll take Hockenson all day long. Flex spot, I took Zay Flowers, another one of my sleeping wide receivers. $23, a little more expensive. Had to suffer, of course, in other places. That's where I saved the money from Robinson and Chuba Hubbard. But Zay Flowers against Seattle, that offense is starting to click. Give me that offense any day. And Zay Flowers, he gets a ton of volume. Hopefully he gets in the end zone to make this work. Saints defense playing the Bears. No Justin Fields. Running back situation, you don't know who's going to be the running back, who's going to be the guy, and you got that rookie quarterback. So give me the Saints, get the pass rush. Hopefully they can pressure the quarterback and cause some turnovers. But I like the Saints defense at $18 versus the Bears. All right, well guys, that's all I really got for you this week. Listen, follow me on Instagram at J_Vegas33. I put a lot of stuff up on there. I'm working on getting the other ones up, but listen, for now, follow me at Instagram at J_Vegas33. Follow along. I put a little promotions up there, snippets of the show, and other things. And also, listen, every Thursday, follow us at First and Mad. It's a live show we do on Facebook. If you follow Mad Maddie's Casinos page, it will alert you at live streams, and it's every Thursday at 7 p.m. We do it during the broadcast of the Thursday night game. It's a lot of fun. It's a good show with me, Brad Michaels, and Floody. It's a good time. Listen, you'll have a lot of fun watching that. I think it's a good show to listen to, especially while you're watching the Thursday night game. So give us a follow, comment on there, and listen, guys, if you have a chance, come down to Mad Maddie's and watch the show live. We are open to take questions from people watching. So please come on down, join us for the show. We'd love to have you. Love to see you there. And it'd be a whole lot of fun having you in the room with us. All right? All right, guys. Listen, we'll see you next time. Hopefully next time I can get down the breakdown of our entertainment shows with Sean. It's been a hectic week. Well, hectic couple weeks. But anyways, we'll get back to you guys on the Loki show. I know that's coming to an end soon, and we're going to review our league spots next week. So, guys, until next time, thanks for joining the Vegas Guys Locker Room. I'll see you next time.